Harmful advice from a sleep doctor. I wanted to first call the video simply advice from a sleep doctor, some of which many people should follow. And this would have led to the fact that I had a lot more patients. But still, I am a doctor. I should help people. And these are really harmful advice. First, I will give the advice myself and then accordingly debunk this myth that it is somehow useful for sleep. Occasionally, these tips can be harmful. In this video, you will learn about 5 tips that you should not follow. Be sure to watch this video to the end and you will have a strong and healthy sleep if you do not follow these tips. First, if you can't sleep, you need to try harder. Well, it seemed like you were lying down and eventually you would fall asleep. You know, like when you can't do a somersault in everyday life? Repeat it 100 times and you'll understand. Basically, you must persist, and after enduring enough, you'll achieve something. With sleep, it's the complete opposite. As soon as a person starts trying, as soon as a person starts worrying about it and thinking about not being able to sleep, they start to develop a strong conditioned reflex of fear of not sleeping and insomnia. Because a person is trying in bed and literally 20-30 attempts of more than 15 minutes each without falling asleep. This will lead to the formation of a reflex of fear of not sleeping, and the next time even some stress passes, you will painfully want to sleep. But as soon as you approach the bed, sleep will be taken away as if by hand. This is basically another conditioned reflex, like a Pavlovian model of insomnia development. And therefore, the main rule: if you went to bed and did not fall asleep, within 15 minutes get up, go to another room and engage in some boring activity until you really want to sleep. And only when you want to, go to bed. But you may ask, what if I can't sleep enough? Either way, you're not getting enough sleep. But if you lie in bed, you'll trigger and reinforce the fear reflex and fall asleep and become both bedridden and insomniac. If you don't sleep, you'll build up a sleep deficit. And the next night, you'll sleep better. That is, you will have an extra sleep elixir. So again, don't lie in bed for a long time trying to fall asleep. And if you did follow this advice and try to fall asleep, give this a like. Video. The second tip. If you can't sleep, consume alcohol. This is also a fatal advice. I'm not against, I'll say right away, small doses of alcohol. This is somewhere up to 10-20. Well, a maximum of 1 fluid ounce of pure spirit, better 20. This is basically a bottle of dry wine weighing 208.8 ounces. This is a preparation, one might say, which has a slight tranquilizing effect, but if it is only occasionally and periodically considered no more than 6-8 intakes per month, just like with tablets in fact, if you consume alcohol as some kind of sedative. But any medicine can be turned into poison by excessive dosing. If a person drinks somewhere around 7 ounces of vodka, then undoubtedly the sleep of the alcoholic is short and restless. Ethanol itself, alcohol, it has a calming and sedative effect, but then the products of alcohol metabolism, acetaldehydes, accumulate and they have an irritating, exciting effect. So one might fall asleep quickly, but the latter part of the night will be poor. Shallow, unsettled, unrefreshing sleep. There's an interesting expression that yes, alcohol is a good sedative, but it needs to be taken every 4 hours because of its short duration of action. And you can imagine that you will soon turn into an alcoholic. So, small doses sometimes, yes, but if you regularly take substantial amounts of alcohol, it can only worsen sleep and lead to more problems with insomnia, anxiety, depression, and so on. So, don't drink a lot of alcohol and not at night. Harmful advice number 3. If you have chronic sleep disorders, you need to go to the doctor right away. Or even better, don't go to the doctor at all, but start taking some sleep aids right away. Well, now, thank God, a significant amount of drugs have become over-the-counter. Although, I'll say such, was a blessed indignation of people. They said, how so? They take away our cool drugs. We slept so well with them. I'll say that I naturally know, consulted a huge number of people, essentially drug addicts of medications. You see, sleeping pills cause addiction. First psychological, then physical. And accordingly, especially with chronic insomnia, if there are any causes causing insomnia, just symptomatically treating the symptom of insomnia with drugs without eliminating the cause, nothing good will come out of it. Because yes, at some stage we can help, but then physical dependence on the drug develops, the need to increase doses, side effects that require drug withdrawal. And drug withdrawal will lead to the fact that a person will have even worse insomnia than it was at the very beginning. because we did not eliminate the cause, which continues to act, and also the phenomenon of withdrawal with additional insomnia arises, and the need to prescribe even more serious, stronger drugs arises, and the person essentially turns into a drug addict. So here's the advice. If you have insomnia for more than 3 months, and you went to the doctor and he, without much thought, just immediately prescribed you a sleeping pill, this is the wrong tactic. You need to try to examine the person, identify the cause, which there are several dozens, if not hundreds, and eliminate the cause of insomnia. And just off the top of my head, for example, iron deficiency can cause insomnia. An increase in thyroid function can cause insomnia. Well, what kind of sleeping pills here? Or, for example, obstructive sleep apnea syndrome, when a person has several hundred breathing stops at night, which wake up the brain, and the person complains of insomnia. But in fact, these are breathing stops. If you give a sleeping pill, then the brain will sleep even deeper, will control breathing less. You can simply die from suffocation in sleep, from apnea, from breathing stop. That is, once again, with chronic insomnia, you need to thoroughly examine, consult better with a qualified somnologist to make the correct diagnosis and eliminate the cause, and then you will not need to prescribe any sleeping pills. Actually speaking, I am engaged in that. I effectively treat people without pharmacological means, without sleeping pills, tranquilizers, antidepressants. Not that I am fundamentally against them, and I prescribe them according to indications, but in a significant percentage of cases, I manage to cure chronic insomnia in patients without drugs or even canceling drugs, applying so-called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. I have Dr. Buzanov's program. In a month and a half, I cure more than 70% of patients with chronic insomnia. In the description to this video, you can read the link to the program. By the way, you can view reviews from patients who successfully overcame insomnia through this program. If you have chronic insomnia and you want to fight insomnia without prescribing drugs or even canceling them, contact me. I can effectively help you. The fourth harmful advice. If you have poor sleep, you fall asleep poorly, wake up in the middle of the night, or wake up earlier than necessary and can't fall asleep afterwards, you need to just lie in bed as long as possible. Well, look, you've spent 30 minutes falling asleep, you've had an hour of waking up in the middle of the night, you woke up an hour earlier than you wanted to, and you've already spent 2.5 hours without sleep. So let's go to bed an hour earlier and get up an hour later, and maybe we'll get our own back. Actually, this is an extremely harmful advice that leads to the person starting to sleep even worse. If something has disrupted your sleep and you start to lie in bed longer, your brain needs as much as it needed before insomnia, for example, 7 or 8 hours, and that will be enough against the background of insomnia to sleep. But if you chronically start to lie in bed longer, for example, 10 hours and your need is 8, then you effectively add another 2 hours in bed, which you will inevitably spend without sleep. But it's not like you'll sleep here for 8 hours and you won't sleep here for 2 hours. Your 8-hour sleep will spread over 10 hours of bedtime, and you will have even more problems with falling asleep, even more problems with awakenings in the middle of the night, early awakenings. And there's another peculiarity of such a long stay in bed. You will remember when you woke up, and if you, say, woke up 15, 20 times and remembered it, you will remember how you fell asleep, how you woke up in the middle of the night. There the neighbor was snoring in bed, birds started singing, cars started moving, the sun rose. You will have the feeling that you practically did not sleep at all. And pieces of sleep between these awakenings will fall out of memory. Someone claims, I'm in bed for 10 hours yet only sleep 3. Despite this, I can't fall asleep late in the day, unlike before. This suggests that the person is oversleeping in bed. That's how sleep perception disorder occurs. Yes, one doesn't recall being asleep, but they are. And the most effective method of treating such insomnia is the method of limiting the time spent in bed, with the same 7 and sometimes 6 hours to induce a sleep deficit. Once you've accumulated a sleep deficit, you'll sleep seamlessly for approximately 6-7 hours. Then you can gradually increase the time spent in bed. You've heard some tips already. What did you do yourself when you started having problems with sleep? You laid down and tried, you lay in bed for a long time, you consumed alcohol. Write in the comments what means you used to fight insomnia and whether these were harmful advice. We'll share and we will discuss with you, then I will tell my thoughts on this matter. The fifth harmful advice: if you have accumulated a sleep deficit over the week, well, this is a fairly common situation, especially for owls who like to be active in the evening and they need to get up in the morning. They are messing around with their smartphone, I don't know, they are chatting and so on, they don't get enough sleep. And then Friday comes. Essentially, you desire to stay up later, rising not at 6 a.m. but around 1 p.m. after a good sleep. Since he overslept on Saturday, he went to bed around 3 in the afternoon. He woke up at 1 in the afternoon the next day, after an even more restful sleep. That is, everything seems remarkable, as if life has succeeded. But Monday you need to rise at 6 a.m. A person starts trying to sleep from Sunday to Monday, but naturally he can't, because he overslept. He shifted his circadian rhythms by 7 hours later. But if it's 6 in the morning and an hour of the day, it's a difference of 7 hours. And then he barely falls asleep by the middle of the night but can't wake up in the morning because it's hard to shift his circadian rhythms back. It's the same as flying from Moscow to Vladivostok and going to bed and getting up earlier there. Naturally, the entire Monday is spoiled, especially if the person comes from work and takes an extra hour's nap. He can't sleep again from Tuesday, from Monday to Tuesday, from Tuesday to Wednesday. Well, somehow he gets back to normal, well, because you still have to go to work, and then the next weekend comes and everything starts all over again. Remember, they said it's very harmful to switch to winter, to summertime by 1 hour in spring and autumn. Our mortality rate is marginally rising, leading to reduced workability and increased suffering. And here a person arranges for himself a transition back and forth for several hours 4 or 5 times a month. Well, that is every week. And this, of course, significantly disrupts normal sleep. Issues with insomnia, falling asleep, and nocturnal awakenings. That is, this is such a pronounced so-called social jet lag. And in this situation, a person is half awake during the day and half asleep at night. Everything is falling apart for him. His circadian rhythms are falling apart. And this sometimes causes serious sleep disorders. And not just sleep disorders, but headaches, digestive problems, eating problems. In general, this is a serious problem, which, by the way, according to experts, affects about 10% of the adult population in Moscow, because on weekends they get up 4 hours later or more compared to working days. Here's a piece of advice. A difference of 2 hours, the body can still more or less cope with this. Therefore, getting up on weekends should not be later than 2 hours compared to work days. Just try not to make up for the lack of sleep during work days, or don't stay out late on Fridays, Saturdays, so you don't sleep until lunchtime the next day. And you will see that literally in 2-3 weeks your sleep will become much better if you maintain a strict sleep schedule. To follow the correct advice and accordingly take the right or other correct actions if you have any problems with sleep, watch my channel. Here is a lot of useful videos about sleep hygiene, lifestyle, dealing with sleep problems. And by the way, don't forget to click on the bell so you don't miss my new interesting videos.